All right, good afternoon. Thank you all for coming. I think we're the last session before beverages, is that right? Or whatever comes next, NAP. I'm Todd Burke with Adobe, and I have the fortunate opportunity of introducing Mike Hugo and Bernie Laramie, who worked on this fantastic film, The Florida Project. Mike Hugo was the assistant editor, worked with Shaun on the film. Mike's track record goes quite a ways back. One of the great things I like about Mike's track record is Mike happens to be Bernie's trusted advisor and assistant. Mike essentially helped put this project together. Bernie Laramie, if you go on IMDb, you're gonna look at Bernie's background, and it's longer than a papyrus scroll. So he's got a number of major credits. CSI. Can I go back? Max Headroom.
As far as you want.
You did Dallas too, right?
I did.
So, the papyrus. Thank you. These are the hecklers in the front. Anyway.
I did the original 10 Commandments.
Wow. I'm not even going to touch that. Nevertheless, Bernie Laramie, also post-production supervisor and producer on the Florida Project. Thank you, guys. It's up to you.
Thank you.
So here's a little trailer to show you guys what we just worked on and what the Florida Project is.
Calling the magic castle too. Yeah, sure do. $38 a night.
Okay, I warned you. One drip and you're out.
Oh, come on!
Out now.
It's gonna melt outside.
It's melting inside, too.
But Bobby,
Out. Thank you very much.
you're not welcome! The man who lives in here gets arrested a lot. These are the rooms we're not supposed to go in. But let's go anyway. Could you give us some change, please? The doctor said we have asthma and we gotta eat ice cream right away.
Here you go.
Hey, Lee, got a situation here. Open up.
It's only second week of the summer and there's already been a dead fish in the pool.
We're trying to get it back alive.
Water balloons thrown at tourists.
Boobies! Boobies!
I failed as a mother, Moni.
Yeah, Mom, you're a disgrace.
New job?
Yeah.
If you're working, who's looking after money?
You're not my father.
I don't want to be your
You
father.
can't treat me like this.
You don't think everybody knows what's up here, Lee? Everybody.
She's about to cry. I can always tell when adults are about to cry. Why is my mom yelling?
Just talking, they gotta figure something out.
See, I took you on a safari. Whoa. Let's go, come on.
Have a nice day.
Love you, Bobby!
I love you, too.
Shaun Baker, the director of the Florida Project, his previous work was mentioned briefly in the trailer called Tangerine. It was the first movie shot entirely on an iPhone and to get a commercial theatrical release. Not bad. And so the Florida Project, was a little bit of a jump for him, and he wanted to shoot it in film. And so the producer who I'd worked with before, Kevin Shinoy, called me up and said, "Do you know anything about film?" And I explained to him that I was actually born in Rochester, New York. Daddy worked for Eastman Kodak for 40 years, and that I went to Rochester Institute of Technology and studied film. So I kind of knew how to do this. And so he said, "Okay, you're on." And we were off to the races. And it was clearly going to be different from most of the other studio/network projects that I had done before, where I had a big team. This was going to take a lot longer. It was going to be done by fewer people. And in order to do that right, I needed to find the right assistant. And it couldn't be just a mechanical guy. It had to be somebody that not only understood the technology, but also understood how Shaun wanted to work in Shaun's unique way, which we're going to show you a little clip from. And to do that end, I brought in Mike Hugo, who I've worked with on several projects before. He helped me to recut a movie called Queen of the Desert with Nicole Kidman. He cut Atlas Shrugged for me, which is a movie that I did a while ago. And he's also done 360 and VR and 3D with me, et cetera. So I knew that I could trust him not only on a creative level, but also highly knowledgeable from his online experience, et cetera, to be able to handle all aspects of this project. Thankfully, he was able to give me part of his time and the way it all worked out. And that's what got us to how we were doing this particular project. So as I mentioned, it was shot on film. As soon as we made the decision to shoot it on film, of course, we then made the second decision, which was it's almost ridiculously expensive to shoot film at night because it requires so much light. So the night footage, we decided to shoot on the Alexa. It's not shown in the trailer, but at the end of the movie, the children, the reason it's called the Florida Project is because the Florida Project was the code name for Walt Disney when he did the Disney World. And the children always have the fantasy about Disney World. At the end of the movie, they make a mad dash for Disney World, and we make it on to Disney World. Kind of a difficult clearance if you want to shoot 35 millimeter film in Disney World, so how are we going to do that? And Shaun said, well, I'll just shoot it on my iPhone. So we guerrillaed Disney World and got away with it. And therefore, we had to integrate 35 millimeter film, Alexa 4K, and iPhone 4K
with Filmic
nonlinear.
Pro. Yeah.
Right, with Filmic Pro. To do that, we shot everything on the East Coast, just outside of Disneyland, in a real hotel. And I needed to get it processed, so here's how we did that. This is the real location in Florida. Fortunately, we were only in one location for most everything, a little bit of travel, but nothing serious. Film was shipped over to Atlanta, to Crawford Media Labs, where they did the processing and they leadered it, set it up, sent all of that with the sound up to our friends at Technicolor Postworks in New York City. At Technicolor, we took and scanned everything, all the film that was shot, as well as all of the 4K Alexa footage that was shot and the iPhone. We put it all into a common format, and out of that we created what I call the 3 E's of dailies. The engineering ETs, which is the full 4K ProRes 444 clean that we used. The actual scans were in TIFF and DPX, for those of you that are more technical. We can explain that more later. The executive dailies were H.264, posted to Media Silo so that people could log in on their iPhone and iPad and see it. And the editorial dailies were in DNX. We're going to get back to why they were in DNX and how we managed to use that plus Premiere Pro. So 3 different formats. For security reasons, we put a watermark on the H.264. We had all of the technical codes in the letterbox area of the DNX HDs. And the engineering dailies, of course, were in 239 and full res and letterboxed and all of that good stuff. So, at the end of that process, everything was shipped. And Shaun didn't want to cut in an office. He didn't want to cut it in a formal cutting room. He decided he wanted to cut in his bedroom. And I'm not going to show you his address, but I'm going to show you down the street from his address, which is here at Trejo's Coffee and Donuts. Those of you that happen to have seen Tangerine, that's the location for Tangerine. It's just down the road from his house. With that in place, we were able to turn it all over to Shaun and begin that interactivity with Shaun and the assistant on how we handled the workflow. Shaun was not able to be here. He's in Japan right now at a film festival with the movie. But he did an interview for Adobe earlier, and I pulled a clip from that I wanted you to see that explains kind of his unique approach to the editing process.
For me, editing is 50% of direction. For my films, it really is, because I'm doing I'm recreating it in post and I'm rewriting it in post. And so I really do feel that it gives a signature as well. And that's why I do it. Not all directors like that, and I completely get it. But for me, I allow directing to continue into post. My post-production supervisor, Bernie Laramie, suggested Mike Hugo for this because of his knowledge of Premiere. Was basically there to check in. He was there to check in, to clean up my timeline, and then as we, of course, got closer to delivery, then he would take over completely and get the EDLs out and make sure the conforming was all happening. My duty was just the creative, and I was just there to get a timeline complete and say, this is my cut. He was doing everything else.
So Shaun is a very hands-on director. He's used to doing everything himself. With Tangerine, shot it all on iPhone, cut it in Final Cut X. We were not going to do that because of the film process in this film itself, so we were trying to figure out what he wanted to cut on. He was going to go with another editing system, but he wasn't very comfortable with it, so we brought up the idea of using Premiere Pro. We do know film works because the Coen brothers used it for Hail Caesar. That was a film workflow also, so it's been proven. So one technique we did use to help Shaun out to pick up Premiere Pro very fast was to use keyboard shortcuts. And let me show you real quick, jumping into Premiere. If you do use another editing system, there is a very nice way to hit the ground running and be a little more comfortable with Premiere Pro so you can really mess around and sort of figure out how it works. So here is your keyboard layout. You do a pull down, and here's Final Cut Pro 7. Boom, there it is. Okay, I can hit B for blade. I can cut. I can do A for arrow. I can do S for slip. You can get going right away and make it the way you want it to work. Say you're coming from Avid Media Composer. They have that too. So here is Media Composer 5. You get in there. I can do an insert, hit V. I can do an overwrite, hit B. Let me show you that real quick. There's V, there's your insert. B, there's your overwrite. So you can hit the ground running whatever program you use. This is, I like to call it, it's more of a drag and drop system. I'm very comfortable with that. I like to experiment. Shaun is very much the same way. He's very organic the way he cuts. And we didn't want technology to get in the way of that. This was not your traditional Hollywood feature film. This was our edit bays. Shaun and I were never in the same room editing, in the same building editing, in the same zip code editing. So this is where we were, Shaun and his assistants. This is Ghost Me editing, it looks like. But Shaun was editing in Los Angeles, New York, Japan, London, at 2 in the morning, 4 in the morning, 4 in the afternoon, 12 midnight. He could work whenever creative ideas came to him. I would get sequences at 4 in the morning. He was up all night cutting. He could do what he wanted to do. So with that in mind, it was a little tricky because we were on 2014 release and we were not about to jump into the beta for team projects, which team projects, I love using it now, but we weren't ready for it at that point in time. So what we did is we took a 2-project method where I would create the master. So what Shaun would do, he would send me his project, I would have mine open, I would go to his project, Shaun's work in progress, and we don't have it for this instance, but we would always timestamp date and time just as a secure backup so we knew exactly what we were pulling in. But I'll show you as soon as this blue bar finishes. And this is, again, another great feature that I do love about Premiere is having multiple projects open. As you can see, it was an earlier version. You can have 2 projects simultaneously open in Premiere, which is very nice to do, especially going back into old projects, pulling old sequences into new sequences. So as you can see, this is Shaun's work in progress. I can open up or I can just copy, paste his sequence in, which I actually have a copy already in here. Sorry about that. So here's Shaun. So I can open up his, and you know what I can do too, which we really do like, is I can use Pancake timeline editing. So I can have my timeline, Here's my real one. I can have Shaun's below. I can drag and drop from sequence to sequence. Very handy. I am very visual, so I will look at what he did, match it up, listen to it, see what effects he has on there, if anything. Very handy tool to have. So Shaun also likes to cut in what we call a fine cut. He cuts chronologically, and he does not move on until he has a cut that he is completely happy with. So he can keep building. It's almost like building Lego blocks, where you want that foundation to be really solid so he can keep moving. So let me show you one example of a scene that Shaun did, and he used a technique in here that really helped to get him timing and finesse going. So bear with me, I'll show you this clip. It's about a minute long. This is from the final picture. As long as the beach ball stops. Bear with me as we pray to the editorial gods.
Did you crash?
There we go. All right, here we go. Excuse me.
Gloria, we talked about this before. Cover up.
Cover what up?
You know what I'm talking about.
I do not know.
That's right.
What kids are here?
The kids are right over there.
They should be in school,
Now,
kids.
summer break. Can you read? What's that say?
School rules.
No, the other one.
No tits allowed.
No alcoholic beverages in pool area.
Okay, I'll do that, but I still want to go topless in my big titties.
I think he's having a talk with them. Let me go. No, guys, get in. I'll go. Oh, no, Bobby's coming. Oh, no, Bobby's coming.
Just put them away, cover them up.
Oh,
and,
please, cover them up. You cover yourself up, man.
Does this happen all the time? Yeah, and it's great.
So there's a little scene, seemed pretty normal, straight cutting. So let's take a look at one of these shots here. So if I disable our final cut, these red boxes show multiple takes that are going on in this one single shot. So let me go through, oops, and I know what's going on. I left my keyboard in Media Composer. There we go. Sorry about that, everybody. So if I disable this track, you'll see we got a retime here. We've got a retime there. Got another retime and another one. And we got a backplate that we like the timing of. We're shooting on film. We're shooting with kids. Love kids to death. They have hard times hitting their marks. It's hot out. It's Florida. They're long days. So we did what we had to do.
Degrees.
Yeah, so we lock off the camera and we become creative. We need that timing to be short. We're not telling a story of having kids popping up at the exact same time. We need to move on. So this is what we were aiming for with a fine cut, to put that feeling of the little rascals in here, that they're really doing something just to have fun. Let me show you another example of Shaun fine cutting. So everybody on this crew was really impressed with Shaun and really wanted to work the extra mile to get this product to where Shaun wanted it. And so something that I don't see very often is actors willing to record scratch ADR in the middle of a project. So let me show you this scene real quick. We have...
Okay. Haley, 1, sort this out. 2, you smoke in the room again, you're out of here.
I'm not smoking.
Bye, Bobby.
Last warning, Haley.
Yeah, well, I'm not.
So really simple, but Mooney is our kind of our hero here, and we want her to react to Bobby. And so Shaun would call her up and say, hey, can you just record this really quick on your phone? And Shaun would temp it in. And so it wasn't me going, bye, Bobby. It was actually Mooney's doing it. So here's a soloed.
Bye, Bobby.
And it keeps you in the scene. You're not out of the story, so we got to keep building off of that. It's those simple things. We have technology at our fingertips, and we can use it. So that was another reason Shaun likes to cut the very fine cut and move on, and it helps. It really does help. Another aspect of Adobe I use, and I do use this a lot, is actually when we were creating the titles for the front plates, Creative Cloud Libraries is very underused, and I actually use it a lot in commercials. Let me show you. I can click on our asset here. This is our font. This is what we're using. And over in your panel, your libraries panel, I can create a shared project, or shared library, excuse me, for the Florida project. I have my asset highlighted, and I can hit add, and it'll actually bring the asset over, bring the fonts over, and actually sample my foreground color, which I can sample here. It'll bring that over. I can add it to the library. I can immediately go back to Premiere, go to my Premiere Libraries tab, and there it is. Agency brands love this. You can be on brand color, you can be on brand font, you can use it back and forth, things can change, you can update it. I can store slates in here. It's amazing how it helps. There's less questions back and forth. Here it is, this is what it is, you can see it exactly what it is, you have the number code for the color. It's a great little feature that is very underused. So, with all this in mind, Shaun's an editor and a creator. I edit also, but I also come from online. So certain people edit certain ways, and there's no wrong way to do it. It's a puzzle. But to conform a film like this that has such a technical nuance with the film, the Alexa, and the iPhone, I went in and had to clean up all of Shaun's work to make it easier, to make the conform seamless. And let me give you an example of that. So as I showed you, here's Shaun's timeline for Reel 1. Here's your overview. This is Reel 1. So this is about 19 minutes at the beginning of the film. You have, 3, 4 video lines here, handful of audio lines. Let me show you my timeline. So this is my Reel 1. So everything is broken out so that when I send it to conform, they know exactly what it is. There's no questions. And let me show you a little bit, zooming in here. So my line 1 is all film that is untouched. No movement, no speed ramps, no nothing. Video line 2 is all the ARRI Alexa footage, because that was actually shot back out to film and brought back in. Same with actually the iPhone footage. That footage was conformed, shot to film, brought back in. No plugins used in the entire film. Then we have what we call DI optical, which was any moves, pushes, zooms, any of that stuff, so that they knew and conformed they were going to have to work on it to match to the 4K scans. We called this the film optical, which was anything above 115% blow up. We actually went back and rescanned at 6K to make sure we weren't blowing up and looking at film grain. And then we have ARRI moves, VFX plates, all that fun stuff. So the conform itself, which was the scariest point of the entire film for me, I ship it all the way out to our VFX house, which was Digital District, our audio, which was CA Sound in Woodstock, and Technicolor Postworks for picture. I didn't step foot in any of these locations. This was all done out of my bedroom. And it scared me, because usually I like to be there and walk through it in case there's any questions. I sent everything, and I didn't hear a word from anybody. And immediately you go either everything is so messed up they don't want to talk to me, or everything is going really well. Luckily, it was number 2. So that made me finally get a little sleep. But it was an amazing process, because all of that went to Technicolor. Technicolor was able to sync everything together because of our preparation on the front and taking all of our assets and putting it into a single format and working off a time code.
And I never let one of our opportunities go by to say that all of the mistakes that we make when making a movie are mistakes that we make in pre-production. It's all about preparation, it's all about organization, and you go over it and over it and over it and over it until you've got everything down. And the reason that it paid off was not only because Mike really did know what he was doing. I want to point out that we got the movie on March the 10th, and we had it completely conformed, complete DI, as they call it, the color correction, a DCP, the electronic form of cinema release, and full audio mix, and there's no music. There's no score for the Florida project. It's all done with source sound, which when they told me that, I said, that's crazy. But it worked. There's one cue at the end that we had agreed to earlier, but and a cue at the top that was a licensing cue. But there's nothing. All of that audio work, all of the video work, all of the picture, all of the visual effects were done between March 10th and April the 4th. And we had it in Cannes on April the 8th, and it was completely translated and lower thirded in French. We did it all in 4 or 5 weeks. And my point is, thank you, Mike. And then the next one, we're going to use team projects, and I will get you more sleep, I promise.
Yes. Team projects and project sharing, I am in love with. It's going to really compete with some other systems out there, and it is going to make my life a lot easier, and communication is going to be easier. So if you guys have any questions, go talk to the tech geniuses in the back. They are awesome, and we had a great time on this film, and I hope you guys like it.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Any questions? We'll be off to the side.